Welcome to this edition of Super Fantastic Top 10. This time I'll be talking about the most prolific and terrible murderers in the USA, based on how many people they were shown to have killed. Number 10. William Bonin. With 3 accomplices, the Freeway Killer, as he was known, raped and slaughtered at least 21 boys in Southern California between 1979 and 80. Most of the dead bodies were discovered next to freeways, hence the name. He was executed by lethal injection in 1996. Neglected as a child, many believe this trauma helped create the monster he became. Number 9. Patrick Kearney. Traumatized and bullied at school for his slight frame, Kearney saw off at least 21 and possibly over 43 victims in California between 1965 and 77, and perhaps started killing as early as 1962. He picked up young gay men near bars around Redondo Beach using his Volkswagen Beetle or truck, drugged them to avoid a struggle, and sexually abused and mutilated their corpses, often with a hacksaw, after having killed them. Thankfully, he remains in prison. Number 8. Earl Nelson. The so-called Gorilla Man, Gorilla Killer or Dark Strangler was hanged in 1928 for at least 22 homicides perpetrated between 1926 and 27, though some believe he killed upwards of 25 people. An orphan whose parents died of syphilis and who went nuts owing to brain damage incurred in a nasty road accident. This unhinged maniac raped and murdered landladies across the USA and Canada and often hid their cadavers under the bed. Number 7. Ronald Dominique. Dominique raped and murdered at least 23 men, many of whom he had met in gay bars in suburban New Orleans over a 10-year period starting in 1997. He was sentenced to 8 life sentences and is serving time in Louisiana State Penitentiary. Number 6. Wayne Williams. Responsible for at least 23 of the Atlanta child murders between 1979 and 81. Williams sexually assaulted boys and girls before throwing their bodies in the river. Some maintain to this day that Williams was wrongly convicted, and he himself still protests his innocence. Number 5. Juan Vallejo Corona. Originally an illegal immigrant himself, in 1971 this Mexican-American mass murderer and macho bully with anger problems killed at least 25 migrant farmhands in Sutter County, California, with a gun, knives and a machete, though this figure could be higher. Corona descended into madness after dozens of people were killed in a flood near where he lived, and many believe this is why he committed the homicides. He still languishes in prison. Number 4. Dean Call. Known as the Candyman and the Pied Piper, this paedophile was the most prolific known US serial killer at the time and, with 2 accomplices, Call raped, tortured and killed at least 28 boys in Houston, Texas in the early 70s after picking them up in his car. From a broken home, Call was a loner, although a well-behaved and reasonably successful student at school. He was murdered by one of his accomplices before he could stand trial. Number 3. John Wayne Gacy. A respected member of his community and occasional clown at children's parties, Gacy used his status and influence to avoid capture for years. He lured teenage boys to his Illinois home, raped and strangled over 33 of them, and buried them on his property or threw them in the river. He was executed in 1994. Number 2. Ted Bundy. In the 70s, this monster kidnapped, raped, murdered and abused the rotting corpses of over 30 young women in Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Washington State and Oregon, and possibly elsewhere, smartly avoiding capture for years and even escaping from jail. But this figure could be much greater. Charming and handsome, when he wasn't breaking into their homes, he won their trust by pretending to be disabled or a figure of authority, and then abducted them, bringing them to secluded spots. He was finally executed in 1989. Number 1. Gary Ridgway. Known as the Green River Killer, necrophiliac Ridgway may have murdered over 90 people in Washington state from the 80s to 90s. Most of his victims were prostitutes whom he picked up and strangled and whose bodies he dumped in the woods, often returning later to have sex with the corpses. Of low intelligence and bullied at school and by his mother, at just 16 he tried to stab a 6-year-old to death after luring him to the forest. So that concludes today's list. Please like and subscribe, and write your suggestions for more top 10s in the comment section. And don't forget to tune into the next video on Super Fantastic Top 10, and check out the links on the screen and below. See you next time!